We're in Point Arena. So we are at Lighthouse Point. It is a timeshare that we have access to with our RCI. And what it is just to simply, they're like portables. So it's almost like a tiny home. So you can kind of see like the roof and stuff, and you can see the width. So it is a one bedroom. Each has its own little porch. If it's actually kind of nice. Say good morning.
Good morning.
The other unique thing for us that we actually like is on this one is they actually have electrical outlets, and we were able to plug our car in and get it charged. It gets about 20 miles on the electric, and then it goes to gas. So but by having that gives us the ability to drive around and to actually not use any fuel. Gas prices up here are about $4.10. So there's definitely a difference in gas prices up here. Over there is the entrance, and where you check in at, there's also a restaurant. And then if I pan over here, you see more units, and the units go all the way down, and they're actually pretty well maintained.
Cindy and I are driving over to the famous Point Arena Lighthouse, as it's only 2 miles away from where we are staying.
Look at the lighthouse on there. It just looks, it has that classic look, like a Cape Cod or something, doesn't it?
It does.
Really, really pretty. It's interesting, they actually have a helicopter port here. And then our friends actually stayed here. Oh, there's vacation rentals. There you go. Up to 3 bedroom with 2 baths. Interesting. Wow, that'd be kind of a fun thing, huh? Wow, those are actually nice little units. You wonder if there was any history there, if they had one of the lighthouse takers or keepers, if they did anything like that. Lots of great parking here, so if you have an RV, no problem at all.
Just that street coming in.
All autos, yep. So I would think this is for motorhomes and trailers and stuff.
Yes, that's what it says, RVs.
Okay, and so for us, we just come in here, and there she is. There's the lighthouse. Wow, this is a lot of fun. This is just absolutely gorgeous. Boy, you really get a sense it's very cool out here. There's still a little bit of fog, but you have that ocean smell, and you can hear the water, and you can see it crashing over the rocks, especially when a big wave comes in. So yeah, so there's a tour guide. Looks like they have tours at a certain time. So we're going to go over here, pay, it's only $7 to go in, and then they'll take you up for the tour, and here we go.
This is a first order Fresnel lens, named after Augustin Jean Fresnel, who was a French physicist that came up with the idea of using prisms to bend light into concentrated beams that could travel long distances. And the signature of the Point Arena Lighthouse, while this was operational, was a double white flash every 6 seconds. So every lighthouse has a unique signature. It's a combination of the color of the flash, the number of the flashes, and the duration of darkness between the flashes. That way, if you're out to sea, you know where you are, and hopefully you know what you need to do to get where you're going. So the way that they made it rotate that precisely is this big reading machine right here. This is called a Mercury bath and drive system, and that 4,700 pound lens used to sit on top of this shaft right here. And inside this drum was 5.3 gallons of mercury. If you remember your middle school science class, mercury's got 2 unique properties. It doesn't compress, and it's virtually frictionless. So it was literally a liquid bearing of mercury that supported that and allowed it to spin so freely. And in fact, it was so efficient that Bill Owens, who was one of our longest serving light keepers here, that's actually his uniform in the case, he raised 6 daughters out here. And when they were about your size, they talked about how he'd take them up into the lighthouse, hold them up underneath that lens, and they could go like that with their hands and it would turn. Now obviously he didn't have his little girls up there all night long going like that. What he had was a couple of light keepers who were on shifts throughout the course of the night. And they had to turn this crank for 10 minutes every 75 minutes, and that would draw this 160 pound weight all the way up to the top of the tower, and then for the next 75 minutes the weight would drop down, the mechanism would turn, and you'd get the double white flash every 6 seconds. So it's basically a grandfather clock and a camp lantern. And that's the way it ran until 1928, when to the great delight of the light keepers, they ran electricity out here. So the camp lantern went away, replaced by a 1,000 watt bulb, still reached 21.5 miles out to sea. And the turning of the crank was replaced with a 1/8 horsepower motor. And that's all that was needed to keep that turning for the next 49 years. Well, on April 18th, 1906, you're probably familiar with an earth-shaking event that happened around here. The San Andreas Fault is about 4 miles that way. And that morning, it moved 16 feet laterally. So you can imagine what that did to brick and mortar buildings in and around Point Arena. They were either damaged or destroyed. Both of those buildings experienced significant damage from the earthquake, but the tower itself didn't fall down. And you're going to be climbing up one of the probable reasons it didn't. It's a wrought iron circular staircase that went up the center of the tower. So even though the top of the tower went about 5 feet to the north and 5 feet to the south for 45 seconds to a minute during the earthquake, according to the lightkeeper who was up there when it hit, didn't fall down. But the damage was significant. It had 4 huge cracks that went all the way around the circumference of the tower. So after they inspected it, they decided it'd be better to build a new one than to try to repair the old one. So for the time it took to tear the old tower down and erect the current tower, they put up a temporary tower. And this is a picture of it right here. So it looked kind of like a water tank. And they took that lantern room off of the original lighthouse because even though the lens inside was destroyed by the earthquake, the lantern room held on. And when you get up there, you're going to see why. It's a real stout piece of engineering. So they put that lantern room on the temporary tower, borrowed a second order lens from another lighthouse, turned the light on and kept it shining until that tower was done. Then they took this lantern room, put it on top of that, assembled that inside of it, sitting on top of that, and on September 15th, 1908, double white flash every 6 seconds. This building that we're standing in is called the Fog Signal Building, and it was built in 1896, 10 years before the earthquake. Obviously still standing, obviously not made out of brick and mortar. This is made out of old growth redwood. So it probably shook and shimmied during the earthquake, but it survived it just fine. And it's called the Fog Signal Building because it used to house the machinery that powered the foghorns that used to be out there on that point. And they were out there till about 1976 when the Coast Guard did away with coastal foghorns and replaced them with radio beacons. But up until then, we had foghorns. And the last of the air-powered foghorns are over in the corner there. There's 2 big black trumpets that you can see. And that big black tank was the compressed air tank that fed them. And the compressor on the floor is what filled that tank with compressed air. But remember, we didn't get electricity out here until 1928. So before 1928, and going all the way back to that 1870 lighthouse, the horns and before them the whistles were powered by steam. So this room had a big steam boiler in it that was wood-fired that had to be kept stoked up so there was sufficient steam pressure to sound off the foghorns when the fog rolled in, which it does fairly often up here. So your nighttime keepers had to carry 5-gallon buckets of kerosene up the stairs about every 4 hours to keep the reservoir full. They had to turn that crank every 75 minutes to draw the weight to the top, and they had to keep a log of everything they saw and everything they did throughout the course of their shift. The daytime keepers had the lovely task of cleaning the kerosene film off of all 666 of these prism faces. And before the Coast Guard took over in 1939, that frame wasn't painted gray, it was polished bronze. So they also had to keep the frame to the shiny standards of the lighthouse service. And they had to keep this boiler stoked up with wood so that the steam pressure was there for the foghorns. And that house, they heated it with wood and cooked with wood. So in addition to all the other things lightkeepers had to do, the 4 of them had to procure, transport, chop, and stack over 150 cords of wood a year. So if you look at our wall of lightkeepers over there, you'll notice that there are no fat lightkeepers, for obvious reasons.
Like they said, the lightkeepers are in great shape. Talk about a stairmaster, huh?
Yes.
Welcome.
That's narrow.
It is. You
Yeah,
made
right
it.
there.
Ta-da!
It is rare warm up here. This is the part where the Fresnel lens that you saw in the museum stood. This metal was not here. The Mercury bath was right below it, and the Fresnel lens sat on that Mercury bath and rotated here. When we got electricity, they had a 1,000 watt watt bulb in there, and the light went out 21.5 miles to see.
Wow.
Now, on the LED we've been using since 2015, and it blinks once every 15 seconds, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the light goes out 14 miles. And that is plenty, because with GPS and radio signaling, lights really aren't used for navigation anymore.
Okay, we are actually outside on the top of the lighthouse. This is really cool here. So you can actually walk the berm of the upper part of the lighthouse. Isn't this cool, huh?
This is cool. And
This
it's
is
cool.
It's
really
cool.
nice.
It's breezy. It's beautiful, but breezy. How spectacular, though, huh? Yeah, definitely. If you come this way up to Point Arena, you have to do this tour. So we are headed over to the Gazebo. Just really, I could see definitely why they did a movie out here. It's definitely worth coming to. So the gazebo here that we're sitting in is actually not part of the original lighthouse. The family's never had it, but what brought this here was a movie called Forever Young back in 1992. And so after the crew had left, they had left this gazebo with the okay of the lighthouse residents. And it can be used for weddings as well as people can enjoy. But it's made a beautiful addition to the area here. But it's actually not an original piece of the lighthouse. This was actually a movie prop from the movie called Forever Young.